1st last year.
Okay.
And we started sales to the public March 1st this year.
All right.
And so this is it. This is our factory. And so if you use a base sugar, you can make lots of different things with a base sugar. So in here, we actually put 1,700 pounds of sugar, 34 pounds of yeast, and enough water to make 800 gallons. And then 5 days later, we have a 15% base wine, or what we call wash. And that wash then goes into the still. Now this is the first legal still in Dubuque in 140 years. There was another Joe, a guy named Joe Berger in 1864. He started a distillery, and in 1873 they shut him down because he refused to pay the federal excise tax. He did not think that was a just tax. And the federal government said, yes, it is. And so he fought them in court and lost and had to pay a fine of $750,000. Back then, that would be equivalent to several $1 million in today's market. So when we make our 15% base wine, that's only 15% alcohol. Then you don't want that in your whiskey or rum or your vodka, like flavors that we produce. So we put it in our still, and of course it doesn't look like any still you've ever seen, because we make a product that you've never had. And so inside the column, we actually have our copper. And so this is the copper after 150 runs. Inside these are the copper that's reacting with the steam. And so we bring 70 gallons of our wash up to 100 degrees centigrade, and that starts boiling here. And then the heat, or the steam, goes through the copper and creates a heat gradient. And the boiling point of alcohol is, you guys didn't know you were going to be quizzed today, 78 degrees centigrade. And so whenever you run a still, you always get the first part of the run we call the heads, the second part we call the hearts, and the third part we call the tails. And so the heads, if we involved grain, which we do not, so we are gluten-free. Gluten-free alcohol. Everybody's gluten allergy, right? So since we don't have any grain, we have no gluten. Of course, when we're all done in there, all we have is alcohol and water and dead yeast. And so when we're collecting the heads with our stuff, if we had grain, you could actually collect methanol. So methanol is toxic to the optic nerve, and that's where you drink bad moonshine and go blind. So we don't have that capability. But what comes off ours heads is acetone. So what's acetone? And all the ladies rub their fingernails and say nail polish remover. That sounds really tasty with Coke, right? Nail polish? No. So we throw that right in that trough. And then we start our cut of what we call the hearts. And so if you look at the top of our columns, you'll see thermometers. So if you ever watch moonshiners, they say you got to taste it, you got to smell it. Well, if your sniffer don't work, like mine, then what you can do is run it by temperature. And so we run a very tight cut of the hearts from 78 to 80 degrees centigrade. And so if you do that, you'd say, well, why wouldn't you go all the way up to 90 like a lot of places do? Because there's still booze left in this tank. But between 80 and 90 degrees, you'll actually start collecting the stuff that gives you the hangovers. It's called the fusel oils. And so you say, oh, so you're telling me if we drink Paradise and we get goofy and don't remember going to bed with Paradise in our head, we wake up clear-headed or wake up in Paradise again? Yes, that's called the Paradise Challenge. I do encourage overconsumption by anybody. But if you don't have fusel oils, you should wake up clear-headed. So ask anybody who drinks expensive scotch or expensive whiskeys, because they take a very tight cut of the hearts. They'll say, well, I wake up clear-headed the next day. And you can get a little goofy while getting your alcohol. And so that's the Paradise Challenge. We take a very tight cut. Without the fusel oils, beer and wine are full of fusel oils. Nobody in here has ever had too much wine and the next day felt really bad till like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Were you still drunk then? No, but you had those things called fusel oils infiltrating your brain and making you wish you were dead than be alive. So Paradise Challenge, don't encourage you to take it, but you should wake up clear-headed if you use only our stuff. It's not the mix that gives you the hangovers, all these crazy things. So what comes off of here, the stuff that's dripping right now, is E93. It is 186 proof. You'd say that's Everclear. Yes, that is a pure alcohol coming off there. You could run your car on it if you set your carburetor. From there, my son will collect that and dilute it down with the best tasting water in America, Dubuque tap water. And so we don't have a reverse osmosis system or anything like that. It adds cost. And a significant part of what's in your bottle is water. So you can dilute it down. Why not have a good flavoring full of water? And we also make sweet rums. So you got a kind of a sweet finish with the water, sweet rum being made. It was meant to be right here in Dubuque. So from there, if we go this way, These are 600-gallon bulk milk tanks. Those are 800-gallon bulk milk tanks. We recycled them from Fuller's Milk Supply up in Lancaster, Wisconsin. And so, hey, they had to be used by somebody. So we use them here to make our product. If we're going to put them in oak, these are our oaking tanks. When we put it on oak, typically it takes about 7 weeks to get what we call our white sand, and that's my favorite. It has a whiskey-like, and people say, why does he keep saying whiskey-like? Well, if you go look up the definitions by the federal government, what you have to do to make a whiskey, we don't follow the rules. And we have something that tastes an awful lot like a great sipping whiskey that's been in an oak barrel for like 15, 20 years, but it's 7 weeks on oak. And you say, well, where is the oak in the stainless? We actually have a giant big cube of this, and that's our oak. So inside the bag are these little tiny pieces of oak. So it looks like little toppings you put on your ice cream. But that's charred oak. And so the oak gives it the flavor, it gives it the color, it gives it the aroma. When we put it in there, we get out 40% alcohol. We have to put 42% alcohol in. So even a dead tree steals from us. It takes 2% of our boost. So when we say it's done, people say, well, how do you know it's done? I go, look at it, taste it, and say, it's done. So we typically try to match a bottle that's already been set, but in small batches, you're going to get some variation between batches. That's just the way it is. If we don't want to put it on oak, then we basically just dilute our product down to 45% alcohol, or 90 proof, and that's what we call our vodka tank, or our clear tank on the left there. So once that's off there, diluted down, we can put it in a bottle and sell it today. If you say, how long does it take to make a bottle? We can have a bottle in 3 days. So pretty fast. Now if we put it on the oak, it takes 7 weeks for our whiskey-like. Once we drain those off, then our next batch, we just take that oak and use it one more time. And that gives us our Caribbean mist, kind of a mist or a hint of oak. And that's where the name came from. And of course, Dubuque is famous for palm trees, and so that's why it's on our labels. So our palm trees and our hammocks. So that's our bottling section. That's all done by hand. So we have usually about 6 people running that when we're bottling. And then we cap it, put the seal on it. Once we have a label on it, then we have a complete product. Then we pay our federal excise tax, unlike Joe Berger, who got shut down. And that's the tour.